Have you ever felt that you'd experienced something before, but at the same time, you know that you haven't, or maybe you have, in another life, or another world or dimension? Could deja vu be a portal to another life? Let's find out in today's episode of The Inexplicable. Hello and welcome back to The Inexplicable podcast, the only place in the known universe where leaving with more questions than answers means you're heading in the right direction. Today's episode is going to be a good one. It's going to be pretty abstract because deja vu is one of those concepts that gets named a lot day to day, but when you look further into it, there's a rabbit hole there that I may have fallen victim to, and by the end of today, I'm hoping that it will get you asking some interesting questions about it. So anyway, I don't want to keep rambling on. I want to get straight into it. So without further ado, strap yourselves in and let's get straight into it. This is Deja Vu, a door to another land. So what is deja vu? Deja vu is actually a French term that means already seen, and it represents that eerie sort of feeling that you've experienced or seen an event before when in reality you know that you haven't. It creeps up on you like a sort of aura or a feeling which can't be pinpointed or located specifically. You feel certain that you've been through this before, or you've been in that exact place before, like a memory that can't really be retrieved. So it remains around you like a strange sensation of familiarity, and it's kind of looped in your head. That feeling stays until it eventually just dissipates. And I'm sure most, if not all of you, have experienced this at some point, and maybe you've never thought about it any further than that. But if you actually think about it, how is it possible that 97% of the population experience the same phenomenon of a false memory? Is it an error in the human biology? Is it an evolutionary trait? Or is it something deeper than that? Is it truly something mystical? I'm going to take you through the scientific theories first, and then the alternative theories, and see if they can provide the answers we are looking for today. So, how does the trusty science explain it? Well, science has a couple leading theories and many more other theories, so I'm going to run through a few of them, the main ones, and then I'll let you guys make your own minds up. The memory mismatch theory is one of the main theories to try and explain this deja vu sensation. So essentially what it is when the brain recognises a similarity in your present experience to something you've experienced previously, but it struggles to locate that old memory, thus leading to that feeling of re-experiencing something that you know you haven't. So let me give you an example to help you picture it. Say you walk into an office building that has sliding doors at the entrance, the reception desk is straight ahead of you, with some tables and chairs to the right, and elevators to the left. Now, this is a pretty standard layout for an office ground floor. Now, let's say we skip forward a year. You're in a different city. You enter an office building that has the same ground floor layout. A feeling of deja vu hits you as you enter. What is going on there? Well, the memory mismatch theory suggests that your brain is calling upon that memory of the office you visited a year prior because the layouts are very similar, but it can't pinpoint the specific memory, but rather just a vague outline of it, thus causing you to feel like you've experienced it before. So, to be honest, I can see why this is one of the more popular theories, because it's grounded in just pure logic and real life evidence from people. The current research on this suggests that people typically report feelings of deja vu when in novel situations that actually share similarities with past experiences, even subtle ones, like the example of the office I gave before. So that's a popular one, and a lot of logical people kind of are drawn to that one just because it makes a lot of sense, and it's there's a lot of anecdotal evidence for it. So the next one is the cell phone split perception theory. Now, I really like this one. It's based upon kind of the effects of the human psyche, and also ties in the modern day into it. And that's not to say that this theory can't be overlaid onto the past. It can, it's just it would have a different device. Now, this theory isn't too far removed from the previous one, so if it feels like I'm repeating myself, I probably am just a little bit. So, split perception theory suggests that deja vu is caused by us experiencing the same or very similar stimuli twice, but the first time we are distracted, so it doesn't consciously register it. Therefore, when we experience it a second time, it feels strangely similar, almost like you've experienced it before, because you have. The core idea of split perception or perception gap theory, as it's known sometimes, actually goes back a while in the world of psychology. However, within the field of deja vu, there has actually been a modern take on it, like I said, and that's called the cell phone theory. And essentially, this is just a modern iteration of the well-established theory in psychology already. So, like I did before, I'll give you an example to help you kind of picture it and to get a grasp on what it actually means in practice. So, imagine the first exposure to the stimuli occurs when you're on your phone, distracted. For example, you're walking into a cafe whilst texting on your phone. You grab your coffee and leave. Then the next day, you go to that same cafe again, but this time your phone is in your pocket. And as you walk in, that feeling of deja vu creeps upon you. And that is because you went into the coffee shop, the same coffee shop, the previous day, but you were distracted and didn't take in anything. However, that's not to say that your subconscious wasn't taking in all the stimuli around it. Therefore, when you went in the second time, your subconscious remembered it, but you consciously didn't. I think this theory makes a lot of logical sense, and if you're thinking, well, what about when we didn't have mobile phones in the past? People still experience deja vu, right? So, well, correct. The distraction doesn't necessarily have to be a phone. That's just the one that's probably most applicable today. It could be anything. It could be earphones, could be music, could be daydreaming, or even talking to a friend or telling a story to someone. It could be anything. The phone is just, like I said, the device that's used in the modern day. So that's cell phone or split perception theory. So, onto the third one now. This is hologram theory. Now, this is a bit more of a niche one. It's not as accepted as the previous two. But regardless, hologram theory is a little more complicated to conceptualize. So, before I tie it into deja vu here, I think it's important to explain for anyone that doesn't know that each part or each fragment of a hologram contains the information for the whole image or thing. So, if we remember that for deja vu now, when we experience something that is the same or closely resembles a past experience, it actually triggers your brain to reconstruct the whole hologram, or in this case would be the whole memory, because it mistakenly believes it's part of that previous event. This hologram theory was actually influenced by many ideas in quantum holography and neuroscience, especially the works of people like Carl Bribram and David Bohm, who proposed that memory actually might be non-local and rather distributed throughout the brain in a holographic way. This is definitely an interesting way to think about it. I imagine like almost a massive vault full of our memories, and little stimuli act as keys to unlock different memories. So sometimes essentially what happens is an event that is very similar to part of an old memory actually fits the lock and unlocks that memory. That's how I kind of conceptualize it. And that's basically the hologram theory put simply. Right, so that's 4 done now. If it feels like I'm kind of rattling through these pretty fast, feel free to just pause it after each theory and then you can search them up and do a bit extra reading on them if you want more of a detailed kind of in-depth analysis of each theory and the people who put it forward and the evidence and the research articles, etc. But anyway, moving on, we've got next the temporal lobe epilepsy theory. The next explanation here, temporal lobe epilepsy theory, this one isn't as commonly accepted as the main explanation for deja vu, and I'll tell you why. So, TLE, or temporal lobe epilepsy, is a medical condition that stems from seizures in the temporal lobe in the brain. And within the temporal lobe, those of you biologists out there will know that there is the hippocampus and the amygdala, which are key structures for memory function and emotional regulation, etc. So when a person suffering from TLE experiences a seizure, there is usually a surge of abnormal electrical activity, which disrupts the regular function in that temporal lobe area, and this can lead to a weird feeling of familiarity, aka deja vu. So, typically, bouts of deja vu that TLE patients experience are reported a lot more intense than that of non-TLE people. They seem to last longer and feel more intense. So when they've interviewed and assessed TLE patients, their bouts of deja vu are tenfold compared to the average person's. So obviously everyone that feels deja vu isn't having a major temporal lobe seizure. That's not what I'm saying. And that's why it can't really be considered as the main theory for deja vu. But if you break it down, what if there was some sort of micro seizure occurring in that area, leading us to feel a little bit of that deja vu sensation, but not strong enough to where the seizure would actually cause any damage? I mean, it does seem like a bit of a stretch, but what essentially it's saying is that the temporal lobe epilepsy occurs and people experience very strong deja vu. Now, what if that was done on a micro scale, a little minute seizure that would not cause any lasting damage, and that triggers us to have more tame bouts of deja vu compared to the actual TLE patients? I mean, you can probably see why this isn't a popular theory. It's not very nice to think that you're having a mini seizure every time you get deja vu. And as well as that, I believe biologically, to be honest, I think even having small micro seizures, if that was even possible, would probably pile up and the damage would eventually accumulate, in my opinion. So overall, I would say that although TLE is definitely a cause of deja vu, there's no denying that. Nobody denies that TLE does cause deja vu, but it's not going to be the cause for most people. So the next theory I'm going to mention quite briefly, it's the Gestalt familiarity theory. And the reason I'm going to mention it briefly is because in my estimation, it's pretty much the same as the first theory I talked about, which was the memory mismatch theory. So Gestalt theory suggests that your current situation, whether it's a mood or a place or a situation, generally resembles an older memory. And even if the specifics are different, the overall feel of the situation gives you that feeling of deja vu. For me, this is just the same as the memory mismatch theory, so that's why I'm not going to go into it too much, because I'll be repeating myself. But it's definitely a viable explanation for deja vu. I'm not sure why it's a separate theory. I don't know if it's because a separate person put it forward at a different time. If someone knows why these are two distinct theories, feel free to let me know, because I can't really figure it out. And I'm not sure if I've kind of I've actually separated them when they should be together, but yeah, it's pretty much the same as the first one. So I'm not going to repeat myself too much on that one, but that is the Gestalt familiarity theory. And lastly, this is the final kind of regular explanation for deja vu before we move on to the more fringe theories, let's say. So this theory is the memory recall error theory, or sometimes known as cryptomnesia. This theory is basically suggesting that you actually have experienced something before, but your mind fails to recall it. So it might be something someone says, or a place you've gone to previously that you've already been to, but you actually believe that these are original experiences when they are in fact not. It's actually a minor form of amnesia, but don't worry, it doesn't mean you're losing your mind every time you get deja vu. And to be honest, I'm not a big fan of this theory too much, because there are in fact instances where even I've personally had deja vu, and when I've analysed it after, objectively, I have not experienced that thing before. So this would not offer up an explanation for that kind of thing when you know objectively that the thing you've just experienced, that sense of familiarity with, you have not done before or been before. So it's kind of a weak one, to be honest. It might be the case in some instances, but it cannot be kind of a blanket explanation for deja vu as a whole. And with that being said, that is the end of the regular explanations. Now I'm going to move on to some more of the fun ones, which personally I think are very interesting. And even if you're not into this kind of thing, the alt theories, which I'm not really a big believer of many alt theories, but I just kind of like to approach it with an open mind and not be biased going into it, because you never know what you're going to read and what might kind of catch your attention. So just be open to hearing them. Some really interesting stuff in here. But if you're not into anything that's not objectively science based, etc., then you can close this now. Not a problem. So the fun stuff. Let's get it started. The first one, parallel universe theory. This is a really good one of my favorite ones, to be honest. So probably the best alt theory in my opinion, or like I said, my favorite one. This theory builds upon the multiverse hypothesis put forward by renowned physicist Hugh Everett. Hugh Everett invented the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Now, his theory suggests that every time a quantum event occurs, the universe splits into multiple parallel universes, each representing the different possible outcomes. So, effectively, there could be an infinite number of yous in different universes right now, all living similar or different lives, depending on the choices you've made. So just take a minute and sit there and think about that. So every time you make a decision, whether you turn left or right, the universe splits. There's a universe now that you turn left. There's a universe where you turned right. There's a universe where you didn't turn at all. There's a universe where you looked up before turning left. There's a universe where you looked down before turning left. Absolutely an infinite number of possibilities that could occur in that little situation. And think about how many situations there are a day where you could make an infinite number of choices. And them choices are made in just different universes, essentially. Now, the way this ties into deja vu is that the believers of this theory, anyway, say that the moment of deja vu is actually an overlap of your consciousness into you, but in another universe. And in that universe, you may already have done something, hence why you remember it momentarily and get that weird sensation we call deja vu. So it's almost like our consciousness isn't confined to the current universe. But then you go deeper into it, and I found myself I could think about this all night. If there are other universes, which one is the main one? Which one is the original you? Because right now, obviously, we all feel like we are the original version of ourselves because it's all we know. But what if we aren't? What if we're just a choice that we made many infinite decisions ago? I'm laughing because it's mind-boggling. But what if we are just an alt universe version of ourselves? I'll let you ponder on that for a while. But yeah, you can stay on this for so long, and every question opens another door. And to be honest, I'll probably do another podcast specifically more on quantum theory and the universe's theory, etc. Because there's just so much to go into, and it's a lot to take in. So I don't want to kind of burden you with that alongside deja vu. So for this episode, I think that's kind of a good enough explanation to tie it into deja vu. So the next theory is the glitch in the matrix. This theory stems from the infamous movie, I'm sure everyone's heard of it, The Matrix. Yes. If you've watched the movie, then you'll probably already know what I'm going to say. But for those who haven't or can't remember, there is a moment in the movie where Neo, who is played by Keanu Reeves, experiences deja vu when he notices a black cat walk past twice. This triggers Neo to realise that the simulation they're in has been altered, and that deja vu, or the glitch, is actually a signal that the Matrix has changed. Now, after the movie came out, people kind of overlaid the Matrix idea onto our real lives, and it seemed like a perfect fit. The leading thinkers in this belief compared our lives to computer coding. Basically, that we could actually be living inside a computer simulation, and those odd moments of deja vu are maybe just errors in the code or an accidental loop in the code. So I mean, for me, even though it's a fun one to think about, I kind of do just write it off as fiction, as it was supposed to be. It was just a movie. But if anyone has actually any solid evidence for it, which I highly doubt, but if you do, I'd be happy to have a look at it. Indeed. So if you have anything, please let me know. So the next one actually has a bit more of a religious element to it as well, and that is reincarnation. So to be honest, this one, at least in my mind, actually flows quite nicely as a story, but obviously its biggest flaw is that most people don't believe its main premise, which is that we are reincarnated when we die. So the theory kind of falls on deaf ears because the first step in believing it, most people don't believe. The general idea of reincarnation is that we live our lives like normal, we then die, as is the natural order. However, this is where it changes. After we die, our soul actually comes back, but this time inside a new vessel. Now, certain religions actually believe that your good and bad deeds will be weighed up, and the body your soul returns to would be based upon that. So basically, for example, if your bad deeds are really outweighing your good deeds, maybe you'll come back like a pig or like an insect or something, I'm guessing. Whereas if it's good, then you may come back as, a righteous person, etc. So in simple, you could have already lived many times before, and this is not the first time your soul has been here, but only its first time in this vessel that is your body right now. In terms of how this links to deja vu, it's pretty straightforward. You've probably already figured it out as I was explaining it, but deja vu may be glimpses of things that you did or witnessed in past incarnations of your soul. So the previous times your soul lived on this earth, you did things, you went to certain places, you said certain things, people said certain things to you. Deja vu might be a memory of those old lives of your soul, because essentially it's the same soul. If this theory is true, it's the same soul, and the soul must harbour some past memories. To me, that sounds compelling. I'm not gonna lie. It sounds really nice, and it flows well. But given that there's no methodical or scientific way to prove or to even test reincarnation theory, or that I know of, I will indeed also write it off as just fiction. And you know what? It's good fiction at that. So, as I said about the last one, if there is any evidence or someone's got any research that they've seen or even want to conduct, let me know, please. I'd be interested. Right, now the last one of the alt theories that I'm going to discuss today is another really good one, which is dreams, which actually to me is very appealing, and to a lot of people it is actually, to be honest, and it makes a lot of sense. And that's the idea that deja vu is a glimpse of part of a dream that we may have had previously. This theory essentially suggests that, let's say we have a dream about going to a certain place, and then we awake in the morning and that dream slowly fades away like it usually does. Now, it is still true that you had the dream, and this theory relies on the fact that the memory of the dream is stored in the subconscious. So although as the next day goes on, you don't recall that dream, it's still actually present in your brain somewhere. Then, when you actually go to the place in real life that you did in the dream, it triggers your subconscious to recall that dream memory that's been kind of laying low in your subconscious for a while, resulting in that sensation of deja vu. This theory also, although doesn't have the best scientific backing, due to kind of the lack of understanding of dreams in general, to me this is up there as one of the best ideas and the most kind of intuitive ideas for deja vu, because everyone has dreams. Look, how many dreams do we have on one single night, even though you might not remember them? Now, like, there's a small percentage of people that may not actually dream, but most people have plenty of dreams, multiple per night, and maybe you don't remember them. That doesn't mean you're not having them. And if you pile that up over the year, there's so many experiences that you've had in your head that are stored in your brain somewhere. And it's not too wild to say that your brain's kind of calling upon them when real life resembles that dream. So before I move on from dreams, I just want to mention something that's quite quickly. But there are also some people that actually think dreams and deja vu are more mystical than kind of the take I just had on it there. A small group of people actually think that dreams are prophetic and clairvoyance. So in essence, they're a look into the future. So when someone experiences the deja vu feeling, what that is actually a prophetic dream being fulfilled. I know it's a bit of a wild one, but there are genuinely people who do believe it. So just to kind of wrap that up, if you have a dream, that dream foreshadows something in the future. Then when you actually experience that thing in the future, that's a confirmation that your dream was delivering prophecy to you. So, guys, we are nearly at the end of this episode. And to finish it off, what I'm going to do is something a little bit different. I'm going to read some of the in most interesting explanations I found online on Reddit and stuff like that. So maybe I'll do 3 or 4 the best ones, and then we'll call it a day. So some of them might include parts of theories we've already discussed, but that should kind of give you a better understanding of them. But I'll be brief with them, so don't worry. So yeah, let's get to the first one. This one was posted by Velvet Velocet about a year ago, and it goes like this. My theory is, when you have a déjà vu, you have that feeling that experience is something you've done before, or in a place you've been before. Could it be a deep spiritual memory of your pre-life review, before you were born on this earth? It feels familiar, like a dream you've had before. It could be the universe's way of letting you know you're following the path and making the right choices and decisions. Just my 2 cents. Velvet Velocet. Now, I really like this one. So what he or she is essentially saying is that before we are born on earth, our souls or our consciousness or whatever are shown our fate or destiny. And then when we have déjà vu, we're actually remembering the experience from seeing it in the pre-life. This explanation leans on the belief of predeterminism. So it's a real good one, but if you don't believe that everything is already written and predetermined, then this would kind of fall short. But yeah, it's definitely a good one, and it got me thinking. Right, so the next one was posted by relative_hyena7760. It's over 3 years ago, and he says, a déjà vu experience often means a spirit is close to you, watching your actions. Now, why they are watching your actions so closely is hard to say. Perhaps they are waiting for you to let your guard down so they can attack. This is a bit more of an eerie one, and not very comforting to say the least. I haven't seen much of this type of theory, to be honest, and honestly, I'm not sure what the connection or kind of mechanism would be between an evil spirit and the déjà vu, as in, like, why would the déjà vu benefit a spirit next to you? But regardless, I thought it was an interesting one, kind of out of left field. And the more I looked into this theory, there are kind of not like folklore, but stories between older generation people, like in villages and stuff, about this kind of thing where an evil spirit or a jinn or a demon being in your presence might trigger weird feelings like that. So I'm not sure where that actually stems from. It must be some sort of religious book that maybe mentioned it or something. I'm not sure where it actually comes from, but it does seem actually more prevalent than I thought when I first read this. So maybe I'll have to speak to some older people maybe who kind of believe in this to kind of get an idea. So if anyone knows anything, or if anyone spoke to their grandparents maybe about this kind of thing, please let me know. I'm really intrigued by this, to be honest. So the last one today was written by 0D1N333 about 10 months ago at the time of this episode. The theory I'm looking into is eternal recurrence. Basically, when we die, we are reborn into the same life we lived before. If true, technically we have walked the same path before, hence the feeling of déjà vu. This would explain how people have abilities like clairvoyance, foresight, and psychic abilities as well as a strong intuitive ability. From what I've gathered so far, our objective is to free ourselves from this loop and move on to the next loop on a greater scale. There are individual, planetary, galactic, and universal loops. Now, this one is a cool one, to be honest. It's a take that I've never heard. It's kind of a more theological approach to it. It points towards the point of life being improving from the last time, and we keep reliving the same life until we learn the lesson that I suppose the universe or God wants us to learn. Kind of like a level that you keep failing, so you keep retrying until you pass the level, complete the objective, then you'll move on to the next. So maybe that feeling of déjà vu is not because you're failing to recall a memory, but because you are recalling all the times you've tried to live this life already. So that is a good one. And that one is kind of more of a theological approach, because it does kind of get you to think on, what do I actually need to do in this life? What am I doing with myself, etc. And with that done, that is everything I wanted to go through today. I appreciate that it's been a bit of a longer one, but it was too interesting, and there's so many rabbit holes that you can go down with this. And to be honest, there was even a few things I didn't really go into, like the whole alien side of this. So for all you alien fanatics out there, I'm sorry about that, because I was thinking I could probably do a whole episode on that topic alone, and I was cautious about making this too long. But yeah, so maybe an alien episode coming up in the future. But yeah, for me personally, as a scientific, objective type of person, I lean towards the more biological / psychological approaches as opposed to the supernatural ones. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a sucker for supernatural theories. I love that stuff. But when it comes down to truth, I do side with the science. I think for the most part, Deja Vu is probably explained by a couple of the different explanations I expanded on, depending on the circumstances. So one time it might be a perception thing, or it might be a memory error, and then another time it might be you're remembering a bit of a dream, etc. So I think it varies from time to time, but it is probably a collection of maybe 2 or 3 of the theories. But with saying that, still, I am genuinely open to some of the other explanations too, because with these sort of things, even though I lean one way, it's never really smart to talk in certainties, because you never really know. And with stuff like sleep, with dreams, with the brain, with consciousness, and with the soul, nobody has a clue what's going on. Do you know what I mean? So who am I to speak with 100% certainty on this? So I like to kind of consider everything, like I've said. So guys, that is everything. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've learned something, or even I've got you asking a few more questions about this, or doing a bit of research or something. And as always, if you have any questions or points you'd like to make, or any evidence you want to send me, feel free to get in touch with me on the social media, or you can email me at inexplicablepod@outlook.com. So I'll see you next time.